As a hurricane filled with tornadoes rips through Tampa, Florida, we ask the question, are we being told everything we need to know about Hurricane Milton? Hi to everyone, and thank you for joining me back at the channel Just Gone Viral, the most informative channel on YouTube surrounding alternative news and crime the mainstream media won't tell you. Hurricane Milton started to form as far back as September the 27th, but was only formally identified and registered as a hurricane since October the 7th. Days on, the devastation and destruction of Hurricane Milton has now only started to show the aftermath. But is there more than meets the eye when it comes to the information we are being told? As always here at Just Gone Viral, we never settle for just being told, but rather just get involved. So without any further delays, grab your popcorn, put your feet up and strap yourself in. Because what you're about to witness in the forthcoming video clips will give you an altogether different perspective of what could be the real reason for Hurricane Milton actually existing. Many of the viewers on here and subscribers to the channel left comments on previous videos, such as the likes of Mike Lynch's yacht that was also surrounded by mystery regarding the sinking of it, and mentioned such things as weather manipulation, HAARP, and the Act of 1976 in America surrounding weather warfare. Like some viewers, I have my own suspicions regarding Hurricane Milton. These suggestions at first sound like science fiction, but sometimes the truth is more stranger than fiction. I have always wondered if we go on the basis and principle that people are discredited for having their own opinion and views, or sometimes called and labelled a conspiracy theorist, then surely those serving prison sentences on conspiracy charges shouldn't be in prison at all, because the people that put them there in the first place are then also classed as conspiracy theorists.
You guys are not going to believe this. This is your Day X World War III update. What does Hurricane Milton have to do with World War III starting in the Middle East? Well, this hurricane and its relationship to the events unfolding between Israel and Iran is nothing short of uncanny. This is something that I did not expect and nobody could have expected. What you're seeing here is a projection of the hurricane's pathway as it gains in intensity. Right now it's a Category 5. I believe it's still a Category 5. The intensity has somewhat lessened in the past 30 minutes, but it's expected to make a direct hit. The eye of the storm is going to go right over Tampa. Well, what else is in Tampa? The home of U.S. Central Command. U.S. CENTCOM is what oversees all American and, let's face it, Israeli military operations in the Middle East. All of the support ships, the refueling vessels, the amphibious ready groups, the naval assets in the region, the missile defense, just everything, okay, is all controlled here. We are expecting 10 to 15 foot storm surges, okay? So a 10 to 15 foot storm surge, dead center, right around Central Command headquarters, is going to see that this facility, which is right here, you can see it. I don't see any big dams or levees. I mean, this runway, it's basically touching the ocean. This is a 3D view. It does not look, maybe it's like, I don't know, 20 feet or something. Like, we're in a 3D view right now. I presume these trees are maybe 30, 40 feet high. Yeah, this is at sea level, basically, which is the dumbest possible thing you could do, is build this facility there. I'm sure it's there because it's the closest to the Middle East as far as the crow flies, but it's a really dumb decision because now it's about to be destroyed. It's about to be destroyed by this hurricane. Never mind just the flooding, but we're talking about the fact that this facility, I'm not sure if it has its own independent power source. I presume it's hooked up to the Miami grid, whatever sort of, the Florida grid. Pardon my voice, guys. My kids keep bringing home illnesses from school, and I keep boosting my immunity in that respect. So getting ready for the next wave, the pestilence wave of SHTF that comes. But this is insane.
And this just broke. Congress is now confirming that Hurricane Helena did have U.S. government weather weapon planes in it. Now, we already have the tracks. We already have the tail numbers. They don't even hide this crap. It just broke. It's on Infowars.com. Breaking. Lawmakers briefed on weather modification tech conclude Hurricane Helena was DOD-linked weather weapon deployed against American people. Bombshell. There's Dale Whittington, who we're getting on the show, I think, tomorrow. So there you go, of Geoengineering Watch with Colonel McGregor. Let's go ahead and air these two clips back to back.
Yes. The question here is, how does this hurricane's path differ from others that we've seen? I've already had a lot of people call me from the Asheville area, talk specifically about the horrendous damage, and many of them pointed out that that is not Hurricane Alley per se. It's not an area that normally attracts storms. Can you help us understand this?
Well, the bottom line is it was directed there, as the transmission recordings clearly show. They kept that moisture corralled there to deluge in the same location. So again, these are patented technologies, and the fact that we have the entire so-called meteorological community denying that this is going on to protect their paychecks and pensions is absolutely criminal at this point. We know we have private defense contractors that are neck deep in the patents that manipulate these storms, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. We know those two in particular do the weather modeling for the nation's weathermen, National Weather Service and NOAA. Again, both agencies have an illegal federal gag order on them. So at this point, this is an emperor has no clothes moment. That's the best description I can give for something that is so blatantly obvious and inarguable, can only be considered weather warfare at this point. And the fact that, again, the so-called science community is denying this manipulation is criminal. It's absolutely criminal, Colonel McGregor.
If you can do so, could you tell us about some of your recent discussions, conversations, briefings that you've had with political leaders from the states in question that have asked you what you think? First of all, what did they specifically ask you, if you can tell us, and how did they respond to your answers?
Yes, Colonel McGregor, I had an hour conference call yesterday with the representatives and senators from the Carolinas, and we presented the data to them to answer their questions about how this manipulation occurs. They realized this was not a natural event. They're trying to digest the fact that their states were literally under assault from weather modification operations that are clearly connected with DOD operations, and we can speculate again on the agendas and objectives being carried out, but the fact that the storm was manipulated is absolutely inarguable. We know that technology to stop these rotations from even occurring has existed for decades with the manipulation of atmospheric pressure zones. HAARP in Alaska is one example many people are familiar with. That's an ionosphere heater. That's a weapon of mass destruction, period. It can cause an electrical chain reaction in the ionosphere, which heats it to extraordinarily high temperatures, which causes the atmosphere to bulge up and down. The downward push creates a high-pressure dome that can steer the jet stream. And the same type of manipulation can create low-pressure zones. When they have this type of power over the climate system, they can make or break these storms anytime they want. And again, what we see now is storms kept weaker as they're over the ocean because they're harder to steer until they reach the land-based network of transmitters. And then we have, Colonel McGregor, rapid intensification. You've heard that term probably a lot lately because that's how they manipulate these storms. And again, we have Acapulco last October being the extreme example.
Back it up 15 seconds. He's the head of Geoengineering Watch, Dane Whittington. He's on tomorrow for a full hour. I've known him for 20 years. He's testified to Congress, legislatures, you name it. Let me explain something to you. He brings in the weather mod whistleblowers. It never makes the news, okay? Legislatures, federal, you name it. You hear what he just said? Hurricanes always get weaker over land. Now they get stronger. They are manipulating them. We have the flight pass. Let's finish up and then go to Rodney Howard-Brown. Here it is.
Because that's how they manipulate these storms. And again, we have Acapulco last October being the extreme example of rapid intensification. An insignificant low-pressure system developed into the strongest Cat 5 hurricane to ever hit that part of the world in less than 24 hours, laid waste to to Acapulco. And by the way, Hurricane John, which just hit Acapulco again as Hurricane Helene was wreaking havoc in the Carolinas. Not many people know that. So Acapulco just got dealt another blow. So again, how many agendas and objectives are being carried out when we know they can manipulate these storms and we know they can make or break them anytime they want? And again, I bring up the oil infrastructure in the Gulf of Mexico that seems to magically miss any sort of damaging storm again and again and again, while the storms wreak havoc inland and on shorelines. It's not a coincidence.
Here's a question I got. How much access to information do you think the director of CIA has?
Anything he's ever want.
Tom, how much access to information do you think the director of CIA has?
Everything, and plus he can make it up.
Let me, don't, by the way, I can tell you, I don't appreciate the fact that CBS and the director of CIA decided to flirt with a conspiracy, because I don't like that they're doing that. But if they want to take responsibility for this, they can. Let me give you an idea what Brennan says. Can you pull up what Brennan once said the following? The head of CIA, the former head of CIA, said the following. He says, we currently have the technology with the potential to alter weather patterns. His words, not my words. He said this. Is this it, Rob? With him saying that?
I believe so.
Okay. So these are his words. Go ahead and play this clip.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels.
Right.
Wow. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere.
Can you move this? I don't know if this is
on the
clip, I'm just trying. Go find a clip. Just type the keywords. Technologies potential to alter weather pattern. And if you can just go on Google, forget about Twitter. Twitter doesn't work well when we do searches like that. Weather pattern. Yeah, if you can do that. And you will find right there, second one. Click on that. I just want to show the clip, the quote. Okay. Show the quote that he says. So Brennan's words, if you can type in pattern, Control F pattern, there you go. The technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations, right? Okay. So I went a little bit deeper with this. I'm like, wait a minute, what is this all about? Then you know what we found out? Do you know there was an act in 1976 called the Weather Modification Act of 1976?
No.
Can you Google that, please?
Jeez.
This is, again, not me. This is the U.S. government came up with something called the National Weather Modification Policy Act of 1976. You know what this is about? This was about if any company is participating to try to alter and modify the weather, you have to give us a warning 10 days in advance. This is what they came up with, by the way. Okay?
Oh, man.
It's called the Weather Modification Policy Act of 1976. Let's go even deeper. Can you do me a favor and type in Operation Cyrus 70-year anniversary? Type in Operation 70-year anniversary. Craziest article, by the way. Did you see it or no? This one we have to read because it's a little bit weird, but I just have to read it to you. I found it here, Rob. It's called the 7. And by the way, what is crazy about this is the following. This is by far what's crazy about it the most. Pull up the clip I just sent you. This is from the website of NOAA. This is not a blog, folks. This is from the Department of Commerce, Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory. Okay? My pronunciation is phenomenal today. 70-year anniversary of the first hurricane seeding experiment. What?
Wait.
Called Operation Project Cyrus. You go a little lower. I'll read the top, and I'll go to the bottom paragraph below the chart. On the afternoon of October 13, 1947, an Air Force B-17 aircraft penetrated a hurricane 450 miles east of Jacksonville and dumped several pounds of crushed dry ice into the storm just to see what would happen. This was the first attempt to modify a tropical cyclone by seeding it with freezing nuclei. It was almost the last. Watch this. GE was involved in this, just so you know. Wow. You guys can read the rest of the article. Go down to the bottom right after the chart. Let's read it from right here. The scientists were eager to examine the storm the following day. However, when they flew to the predicted storm location, they had trouble locating the eye. After some hunting around, they found the hurricane center nearly 100 miles west of where they expected it to be. To their astonishment, the hurricane had made a 135-degree left turn and was now moving due west. On top of that, it was strengthening. By the afternoon of the 15th, Hurricane King struck Savannah, Georgia. One person died. In the storm surged $2 million in damages. The public was outraged that the scientists had caused the storm to swerve into Georgia, and threats of lawsuits were thrown around. GE's case was not helped when the head of their laboratories of GE, Dr. Irving Langmuir, issued a statement that he was 99% sure the storm had changed course due to the seeding. The chief of weather, government, this is government now, okay. Chief of Weather Bureau, Dr. Francis, thought differently and appointed 3 of his weathermen to find a case where a hurricane had followed a similar track but had not been seeded. The case was published, demonstrating that hurricanes could swerve like that without the use of dry ice, and the threat of lawsuits eventually evaporated. What's the point here? Imagine you work for GE. You're the head of their laboratory, and they say, no, we did it.
Wow.
GE's like, what is the matter with you? Be quiet. You can't say we did it, right? But the government's chief bureau comes out and says, no, we checked it out. The man didn't influence this. What's my point here? Here's where I'm going with this. 7-year anniversary, go read that article. All I'm saying is this. You mean to tell me we don't have the technology at this point in 2024 with all the inventions that we've created to find a way to kill these things and slow them down? You mean we don't? I'm not even talking about creating it.
Which is on the table as well.
Which we know we can create it. CBS host who just was debating, what is her name? Have you seen the CBS clip with Michio Kaku? She said, we've done this.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Right? She said, we've done this. It's not even us. That's the lady who was on the debate with, the what do you call it? I think she was on the VP debate, if I'm not mistaken. This is the interview. Watch this clip.
It's a bad version of it. Just
okay, then don't worry about it. Anyways, so they're even saying that these things happened in the past. She claimed that these things happened in the past. This is her 11 years ago. Forget about creating it. What I'm asking about is, in 2024, we don't have a way to prevent these things? And if we do, why are we not using them? Why not? Why are we not using some of these things to manipulate them to go a different way? I don't know. It's purely a question. But the more and more and more digging you do on government websites, they tell you, we have access to this. We've been working on this. And even the director of CIA says, we have something like this to work with. Tom.
Well, I think we all misunderstood the guy from GE. The guy from GE was paid to work in a lab to modify the weather, right?
Yes.
At the end of the year, you get your performance review to see if you get a raise or you get a bonus. And so what does he say? It worked. Yeah. We did it. We partnered with the government. We put a bunch of dry ice in a B-17. We went up there and dropped this all, hyper-cooled the center of the storm. The storm turned. The next day, we went out looking for the storm. It was 100 miles over there. We're like, uh-oh. It turned west. But this guy is basically saying we have to understand this. He's saying, I work in a lab for GE on weather modification. It worked. So he wasn't being a whistleblower. He was just saying, well, this is my job, and it worked, and it turned toward there. Whereas now the government is like, no. Project Mockingbird and all these other things and the electric Kool-Aid acid test, we would never do such a thing. That's what I think. Yeah. And so the government comes out and goes, no, hang on. Meanwhile, they had already been trying that stuff previously in Vietnam, trying to extend the rainy season. So, and it's like sometimes experiments go bad, Remember the Bikini Atoll?
What's that?
That's where they launched a nuclear bomb and gave a bunch of military guys cancer and things like this.
Yeah, that's why I tell them.
So we've done a lot of tests in our day and kind of messed people up in the process.
And that's why when people, Pat, you bring this up, and there's people out there, because I've seen it, because I've had these conversations, especially with Brandon. People are like, "What? Now you're trying to say?" I'm like, yes, I'm talking about that same government that did what you're talking about. That gave LSD to our soldiers. That experiment with mind altering MK Ultra type stuff. It happens, Pat. Then you have to ask the question. Like, what's besides not being able to stop it, them creating it? Because mind you, these are the same people that are saying, hey, this is because of climate change, are actually the ones changing the climate. They're the ones that can do it.
Well, yes, Tampa, Florida is on the list to become a new 15-minute city. It will happen through the Tampa Moves plan. Yes, you heard me right. Tampa, Florida is on the list to become a new 15-minute city. That's right. The 40 acres of waterfront property is owned by none other than Bill Gates through an investment fund, waterfront property in Tampa, Florida. Now, thanks to Patriot's Voice for that little Bill Gates part of the story. I knew that Tampa was on the list among Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine. There's a bunch of other cities right now that are sort of on that target list to become 15-minute cities, and Tampa is one of them. And right now, of course, in the eye of a hurricane. But again, Patriot's Voice, I didn't realize Bill Gates was actually behind it and the funding for it. But that shouldn't surprise any of us, right? He's behind all of it, it seems. And so just put that in your brain as you think about this story about Tampa, Florida right now and the storm surges that's about to hit there. But first, get out now or die. That was the message from Florida this morning. Hours ago, Tampa Mayor Jane Castor issued a blunt warning ahead of the massive hurricane that's about to hit. It's being called worse than Helene. She said those who choose to stay will likely die due to this storm. This is the largest storm to ever hit Florida in modern tracking history. It's the largest storm to hit Tampa since 1921. Hurricane Milton, a Category 4 storm at this stage, is expected to bring unprecedented tidal surges up to 15 feet, surpassing the devastation caused by Hurricane Helene. The U.S. Air Force just a short time ago flew through the hurricane and found that it's now strengthening once again. So this thing could go, down to 3, Category 3, up to 4, maybe up to 5 again, back down to 4. It's hard to tell at this moment exactly how big it's going to be once it strikes, but there's no escaping the fact that it is going to hit Florida. There's no way around it. It's going to be massive wherever it hits. We could talk about the specific spots of where in Tampa, north, south of Tampa, it's going to hit. It's going to hit the coast, and it's absolutely devastating. Just look right now at people trying to get out of there. It's like wall-to-wall traffic, people trying to get out. They've, of course, shut down water. They've shut down sewers. City of Orlando has lowered the water levels of the river capacity now to try to absorb as much of this as possible in Orlando. Castor, the mayor, stressed that the storm's catastrophic impact could be unlike anything residents have ever experienced and wants people out of there right now. And it seems, according to the reports that I'm hearing, that people are heeding this warning and they're getting out of here. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to play around with this.
Well, and
trying to stay.
You know what else is in Tampa, right? Is the Capcom. So all the communications for all the ships and warships and everything in the ocean and all that. So it's like right
there's
there.
There's a lot of stuff in Tampa. There's a lot of what I'm trying to say, intelligence community stuff in Tampa as well. So this is going to be devastating. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is trying her best right now to pretend that she's in charge. It's almost she's like a paratrooper trying to parachute in right now. Like, hey, I'm here, guys, and I'm going to put on a flak jacket and pretend that I'm part of this team. I'm going to suddenly pretend that I have anything to do with this. And President Biden isn't having it. So something fishy is going on right now at the White House. This is sort of the drama behind the scenes, but I'm telling you, something big is happening. Something very fishy is going on. There's a couple of different angles to this right now. So according to Jack Posobiec, just last night, there was a physical altercation between Jill Biden, who is essentially the president at the moment, and Kamala's staffers. Physical, not just an altercation, a physical altercation in the White House after Joe's press room last week began with accusations that the Bidens were undermining Kamala deliberately. And this is from a White House official. So somebody got in a fight with Kamala staffers about this. They think that the Biden administration right now, President Biden, is trying to undermine Kamala Harris.
Or you could read between the lines and interpret that as that Kamala's campaign staffers wanted to place her in the center of some action, and the Bidens said no.
Right. I mean, that could be the exactly. That's the point I think that is happening here, is that they're trying to stick her into these moments now. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, I'm just like processing this, but so they're saying that the president of the United States is being accused of trying to undermine the vice president of the United States. Like that just seems a little on the backwards to me.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what's happening. But again, remember, he wanted to run for president. He was thrown out in a coup, and he's still pissed about it. So the idea that, of course, he is somehow in love with Kamala Harris and her team is garbage at this stage. I mean, he was thrown out. And in moments of clarity, I'm sure he's aware of that. And Jill Biden, by the way, was furious about the whole thing, didn't want to have anything to do with it, and fought tooth and nail to make sure that President Biden was still the nominee in the new year.
Which, by the way, he was polling higher when they threw him out than she is currently polling right now.
Yes. So it's devastating. And there's a couple of pieces. I mean, just a few minutes ago, actually, President Biden is in Milwaukee. So he's in Milwaukee right now. Again, all these pieces coming together, guys. Just kind of stay with me here. Just try to grapple all these apples right now as they come together. So her polls, the new polls out overnight, show that she's doing really terribly among blue-collar workers in America. That blue-collar workers think that she's a fraud. Right. So these are hardworking Americans, blue collar workers. So what does Biden do today? He goes to Milwaukee and gives a speech in Milwaukee, not with Kamala. He goes by himself to talk about steel fitting and the infrastructure package. He's speaking to blue collar workers. This is not a coincidence. On the same day that this new poll comes out, he's speaking to blue collar workers, basically showing them like, hey, I'm your guy. And she's tanking in the polls. It's fascinating. So yesterday, she accused Ron DeSantis of Florida of ignoring her phone calls. Here's the beauty. She gets on the phone and is trying to call Florida. Meanwhile, President Biden has already been talking to him. So she gets on the phone and he won't take her calls. Ron DeSantis is like, you're not going to play politics with this hurricane. You're trying to jump on the phone now and pretend that you're in charge. You're somehow in charge of FEMA. You're trying to look presidential. You have no authority.
Well, to be clear, the press said that she had called and wouldn't take the calls. He later clarifies that I don't know who he called. She's not involved. So watch her sort of faux outrage as she's playing politics and accusing him of playing politics when really that's what she's doing. Yeah, let's watch.
You know, moments of crisis, if nothing else, should really be the moment that anyone who calls themselves a leader says they're going to put politics aside and put the people first. People are in desperate need of support right now, and playing political games with this moment in these crisis situations, these are the height of emergency situations, is just utterly irresponsible, and it is selfish, and it is about political gamesmanship instead of doing the job that you took an oath to do, which is to put the people first.
Yeah, so apparently DeSantis not taking her phone calls. She's trying to call and he's ignoring her phone calls. This is really upsetting liberals. This is really upsetting liberals on social media in Florida who are, really upset that Ron DeSantis won't take phone calls from Kamala Harris. Just look at the liberal tears. Watch.
This is not political unless you make it political. This weather is not political. It's weather. It's not political unless you make it political. Ron DeSantis is refusing to take calls from the White House and Kamala Harris because he says they're politically motivated. We are in the middle of a fucking disaster. It's gonna come hit us. And he won't take calls from the White House.
Well, if you go to the governor's website, it has a long list of people that he's pretty worried about now. People in juvenile detention centers, people in nursing homes, animal sanctuaries. He's pretty stinking busy, and it is a long list of things that they're actually taking care of. Has nothing to do with anybody's campaign. So what resources does Kamala Harris have at her fingertips that Joe Biden cannot release? Who is it important to talk to at this point?
So here is Ron DeSantis. He responding to all of this. He spoke on my old show, Fox and Friends, this morning to the team over there, and he just slammed her. Well, listen to this response. Watch.
And we've been laser focused on leveraging all resources available, including from the federal government. And I've been in touch with both FEMA and the president, as well as marshaling all our state agencies and working to support our local communities. And so for Kamala Harris to try to say that my sole focus on the people of Florida is somehow selfish is delusional. She has no role in this. In fact, she's been vice president for 3.5 years. I've dealt with a number of storms under this administration. She has never contributed anything to any of these efforts. And so what I think is selfish is her trying to blunder into this. No. And here's the thing. She has no role. No, she has no role in this process. I'm in contact with the President of the United States. I'm in contact with FEMA director. I'm obviously managing all our state agencies. We're supporting all our local government. And I will say this. I've had storms under both President Trump and President Biden, and I've worked well with both of them. She's the first one who's trying to politicize the storm, and she's doing that just because of her campaign.
So actually, that was Hannity, not Fox and Friends. But nevertheless, he's saying she's trying to call. I'm already talking to the president. I'm talking to your boss. I'm already dealing with the president at the federal level. And so President Biden just about 2 hours ago was asked directly that question. And again, so I want you to understand how this is all sort of coming together here. He just threw Kamala under the bus. Listen to Biden. Listen, you have to listen to some cacophony of some reporters yelling questions to him. But one of the questions specifically is about working with DeSantis. Did you talk to DeSantis? Are you working with the governor of Florida? And listen to his response.
Has been cooperative. He said he's gotten all that he needs. I talked to him again yesterday, and I said, I said, no, you're doing a great job. It's all being done well. We thank you for it. And I literally gave my personal phone number to call. So I don't know. There was a rough start in some places, but every governor from Florida to North Carolina has been fully cooperative and supportive and acknowledged what this team is doing. And they're doing an incredible job. But we got a lot more to do.
You can't have it both ways. She can't be in charge of the country and not take responsibility for the country. So that's her campaign. She's done great things as vice president, but everything bad she's not responsible for. She has no leverage on FEMA. The president is still alive and working, but she wants to be involved in FEMA and also show that she takes the credit. So,
yeah, so
okay,
maybe
which one is it?
Head to the border now. Just go. If the hurricane stuff is all taken care of by Biden and the governors, head to the border. Let's focus on that now.
Right. Well, she was just there, and for the second time, really, or really the first time, because the first time she was in a holding area. But yeah, I mean, so she's either taking care of FEMA's response, a big part of the hurricane response, both in Hurricane Helene and what's going on in Florida, or you're not involved with it. Or there's a third way, which is you go on The View and you somehow blame the federal government's response on Hurricane Helene. You've got to figure out a way to blame it on President Trump, of course, because he's not president. Watch.
Kamala, and I'm calling you Kamala because for all of those who are mispronouncing it, I want you all to know how to say it. There you go. But let's talk about something you would do different from Donald Trump. Right now, there is a monster storm barreling towards my state of Florida, a place that's still reeling from Hurricane Helene. Trump is lying, claiming that the Biden administration is intentionally withholding aid from the areas where Republicans live and that FEMA funds are being redirected to migrants. Ironically, that is something he did in 2019. What do you think the effect of these lies are, and why is he doing this?
Well, it's profound, and it is the height of irresponsibility and, frankly, callousness. So lives are literally at stake right now. I traveled to Georgia and to North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. In Georgia, I met a woman who just days earlier, her husband was killed in their home by a fallen tree.
Yeah.
Days later, I met with her and her daughter. You can imagine the pain, the shock that they are still in about what they experienced, what they witnessed.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about real human beings and their lives, and them losing everything. Everything. This woman lost her husband, her child lost her father. People are losing their home with no hope of ever being able to reconstruct or return. And the idea that somebody would be playing political games for the sake of himself, but this is so consistent about Donald Trump. He puts himself before the needs of others. I fear that he really lacks empathy on a very basic level to care about the suffering of other people and then understand the role of a leader is not to beat people down, it's to lift people up.
Absolutely.
Especially in a time of crisis.
Okay.
Then put on some sweats and go hand out supplies and stop doing all these press junkets.
Yeah, shovel some sand then into some bags. How about that?
Show us how human you are.
You know, of course, you know, if you look at how FEMA has been destroyed with DEI over the past couple of years, you know, this is a direct response to how the Biden administration put the idea of equity in FEMA and restructured FEMA, instead of focusing on the actual storm response and how they could marshal money, correctly. They're worried about illegal migrants being labeled misgendered. I mean, that's FEMA's focus right now, and that was all done under the Biden administration. That was all done under Biden and Harris administration. So it's amazing to watch her just sort of parachuting in on these situations right now. And then to me, it's more interesting though to watch how President Biden and the White House is throwing her under the bus right now,
right? And
pointing out that she's not involved in this. By the way, if she was involved with this, they would have had her sitting next to President Biden today instead of Jennifer Granholm. They would have had Kamala Harris sitting right next to him during this press conference today, and they didn't. And they didn't do it on purpose. They didn't do it on purpose.
I saw a meme that said, "Stop having press conferences while I'm on Howard Stern." It's inconvenient because I've decided to do friendly press now. Go ahead, David.
Well, and I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying it looks like Biden is intentionally trying to tank her campaign, and like it does look that way. I mean,
yeah, it's hard not to see it that way.
She's the one tanking it, but he's just not saying the same narrative she is. He's telling the truth with this instance.